All right, welcome back. This is the Virtual Residency Workshop 2026. It is Wednesday, June 24th, 2026. This is our fourth and final session of the day. And our topic is research data management. Our moderator is Peggy Kay from Cal State Sacramento, or Sacramento State, I think is the right way to say it. And I'm going to turn the show over to Peggy to introduce the panelists and take it away.
Okay, thank you, Henry. Welcome, everybody. We're glad to have you here. I'm just going to read a little bit about what this panel will be talking about, and then we'll have each of the panelists introduce themselves. So, research data management continues to challenge us throughout the life cycle of research projects. The panelists will give their perspectives based on their roles and challenges or use cases they've faced, as well as solutions or tools implemented regarding the ever-changing and growing landscape of research data management. Okay, so then we'll go around and have the panelists introduce themselves, then I'll call out your name and you can introduce yourself. So I'll start with Elizabeth. Liz.
Hi, my name is Liz Adams. I work at UNC Chapel Hill. I'm a research associate that does air quality modeling. I also support the training sessions and um, manage several data warehouses. So we use, well, I guess we'll be talking about that later. But anyway, that's my role as a researcher. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Uh, Christopher.
You're muted.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Hi, I'm Christopher Bottoms. I'm a bioinformatics trainer and analyst at Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation. And I've spent 26 years working on Linux, Unix, and then also 21 years using HPC clusters, and work with a lot of data and um, um, I especially like train people, help teach them to how to manage these things. But anyway, next person.
Okay, great. Thank you, Christopher. Joel.
Hi, everyone. Joel Zessman, Director of Research Computing at University of Nevada, Reno. I've been around the research computing game for about 30 years now at this point, both in industry and academia. Some of you may recognize me from University of Miami. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you. Andrew.
Hello, my name is Andrew Marks. I am the Director of Academic and Research Technology at Drexel. We are rolling out a couple of interesting data management tools as part of an NSF grant. I've also worked on a few of my own personal projects out on GitHub to help smooth some of the rough edges that we're using at Drexel to manage our, well, FinOps and the planning and everything that goes into research data management. So.
Thank you, Andrew. Bianca.
Hello, my name is Bianca Azartosh. I'm the AI Literacy Project Librarian at the University of Oklahoma. So I'm coming to this from kind of my own background in physics, being a researcher, and now from the library side to talk about how the library can support the full research lifecycle, like from planning all the way to archiving and being able to connect researchers to other campus resources if there's something that we can't do.
Thank you. Shafak.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shafak Chaudhry. I'm from the University of Central Florida. I'm the Director for Research Technology here. And in our role, we support researchers and develop new services. One of the recent services is a storage service that we just launched this year for the researchers. And we personally, I do a lot of reviews of data management plans at UCF. So I'm hoping that I'm going to share some of those interesting experiences here with the group.
Okay, thank you. And we just want to remind everybody, if you do have questions as we talk about the different topics, you can just put those in the Zoom chat and we'll try to address them as we go forward. So I'm going to start with a kickoff question for our panelists. What do you consider the top 3 components or aspects of research data management? And I think we'll start with Shafak.
Sure. The first thing would be the lifecycle governance. So, who owns that data? Who is going to access it? Where is it going to be stored? How long is it going to be stored? What's going to happen at the end? Are you going to retain it past the project period? And at that point, are you going to, have some mechanism to delete the data, or all of those things come under the lifecycle governance. The second most important thing is data classification. Your data management plan needs to reflect the data classification. So if you're dealing with data that has specific security requirements, privacy requirements, compliance requirements, so you have to make sure that those individual pieces of your lifecycle governance are taking that into account. Maybe you don't have the data access, or maybe it's restricted, or maybe there's some authentication authorization in place. The third thing I think is adhering to the FAIR principles. So, that's the most important thing, I think, for any research project, is to make sure that whatever the data that they're sharing with the world is going to be useful. And that means that it's discoverable, and there's rich metadata associated with it, and you can reuse it, and there's good documentation and all of that. So those are three main things.
Okay, thanks. And who would like to add on? Liz, would you like to add on? Oh, and then we'll go to Andrew.
Sure. I think for a researcher, being able to share the data in an open way to make sure that the data, yeah, like she said, that it's discoverable, and also to provide tutorials for how to use the data and to reproduce the data. So it needs to be clear how the researcher who's sharing the data, how they generated it, and then how additional studies could be done using the inputs and outputs, reproducing that data as well.
Thank you. Andrew?
Oh, I just always want to harp on the compliance and auditing aspects of it, because that's the part the researchers mentally tend to not try to solve themselves. They assume somebody is solving it, and it's usually us on the research computing and data side who we have to know all the administrative seats at the university and the researcher personalities and figure out how to get them to agree without them usually being in the same room, because they don't tend to agree. So there's a lot of dancing around the compliance and auditing to keep them happy while letting the researchers do their cool stuff.
Christopher?
I'd like to add that the code that you use to process your data is also part of the data in a sense. So store your data with store your code with your data as well.
Okay. Joel?
I think the only thing I can add to that is to use your data management plan as a strategic resource as well. Tie it into your cyber infrastructure plan to be responsible for that, but also make sure that you're getting buy-in from your senior leadership for what you're proposing, not during just the grant, but also, as others have rightly said, what's happening after the grant is critical these days.
Thank you, Joel. And Bianca, do you want to add?
Sure. I'd like to add from the library's perspective, something that's really important to us is, or that we see a lot, is that data management plans really need to function as an onboarding guide. So that anybody that's coming into the project midway, or at some other time that's not the beginning of the cycle, can be able to pick it up and know what's going on, right? So that's really important for us at the library.
Thank you. Following up on that, the next question is, what experiences and observations have led you to this list of components? And I'll start with Joel.
All right. Well, I don't think it's any surprise, anything I'm going to say. It's pretty rote. We've all been there beforehand. The biggest one I always see is really miscommunication about, needs and what actually can be provided. And that can happen on multiple levels, both from leadership down to operations level, all the way through to the researcher. The other thing that has led me to this is most of the time this is due to a lack of clarity around funding. Who's actually paying for what at this point, and whether your university or institution will bear that cost going forward, or if it's for the researchers. And then, there's always, you have to deal with the issues of assumptions about what's available from central resources. Speaking as currently a central resource, it's critical that we're clear on what we can communicate because otherwise people mishear what we're saying at that point. And timing. Timing is everything, right? We've all been in the bad situation where you're being brought in an hour or two before the grant submission. How about the worst one when you're being brought in after submission? All right. And then the worst, now there's the award and there's nothing for data management there. And then there's our nightmare that we've all dealt with beforehand. So where do I put the data now that my grant is over? So try to avoid those at all costs if possible.
Thank you, Joel. Would anybody like to add their experience or observations? Shafak.
I just want to add that sometimes you also have to look at it from the legal perspective. So the grant might be asking for different retention, but your legal requirements in your state may be having a record management timeline that's different. And so that's usually the case for us. And you have to make sure that the data management plan is looking at both those things.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to our third question. Why is research data management important? What are the reasons that CI facilitators should encourage researchers to put effort into it? I'll start with Christopher.
First of all, the data you produce is like that's like the whole purpose of your research or your I mean it's so you're creating this very important information. You gotta safeguard it. It's just like you say safeguard the things that are important to you. That's like anyway just um and it just I can't tell. I mean, there's multiple times I work with the DNA core, and I mean, there are multiple times people would contact me. Like we made very clear what our data management policy was. We kept the data for a year, and then it got deleted, and like which is very generous back, like a lot of other places didn't. Anyway, but still, I get calls and emails of people like, "Oh, I wanted to download my data," and it was like, sorry, it was like deleted last week because I mean it's just like kind of broke my heart that but anyway it's just your data is so precious and also um you need to identify what's the data that's like I call data as assets. I mean, whenever you do DNA sequencing or there's other things that you do that produces data, there's something that you want to preserve forever, um and uh and also to be able to reproduce it, you have to, like I mentioned, the code and but anyway, it's a just I don't know why, but I guess sometimes people anyways, yeah, your data it's just as precious as your lab equipment or anything else you're working on or your lab notebooks. I don't know how to get that across to people, but anyway, um, sorry I'm rambling, but go ahead, next
That's
person.
good. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Bianca, do you want to add to that?
Sure, just to follow up on that, right? Data that is well managed is what can be reused, cited, it's built on. So this is really important for researcher impact and the institutions themselves and the broader community. So sometimes at the library, we see things that happen at the end of the research life cycle. And it's always a lot more work to remediate than to prevent some bad things from happening along the way. So planning from the very beginning is very important. And that encouragement is great because facilitators, are often in contact with researchers early on in the process. And that's the right time to be asking questions about if you're going to, do you have a data management plan? Do you know what repository you're going to be using? Things like that. And then they can come to us and we can support them with that. And we really try to support everything that happens along the way. So everything that comes before that first data set, all the way to when the last paper is published and anything in between. So it's really important for that collaboration.
Thank you. Andrew.
I know on the system side, we are no strangers to this idea of total cost of ownership as a number that's very that drives a lot of decisions. I don't see that same concept always click with the researchers. And I think it's important that we maybe not total cost of ownership, but the total time cost of ownership. Proper research data management saves us time and money in the long run. I think plain and simple. The time to add your metadata is not after the fact, trying to chase it down from different places. The time to have these discussions is not 2 years down the road or 3 years when the grant's over, and now you're saying, where do I store the data? If you do research data management right, it saves everyone time, effort, hassle, agita. On the system side, we know that part of it where, your failure to plan is not my emergency, except they always seem to manage to make it our emergency. So really, it pays us dividends if we can enforce some sane standards.
Joel.
I think I just underscore something that Christopher said a little bit earlier on. If you don't have a data management plan and a plan for how you're going to keep everything afterwards, your data's gone. And that's just a sad reality of funding these days.
Good point. Shafak, did you want to add anything to the conversation?
No, I think the key points were mentioned already because like science begets more science, but you can't do that if you are not making that data available in a format that others can use it. But I also want to stress again the impact point that Bianca mentioned because um, if researchers want to have more successful proposals, I think sometimes this impact data is very helpful for them to show that how valuable the data is, and they can actually uh, depending upon where they are storing it, even have data to support like, downloads and traffic coming from different parts of the world to show the interest piece and then tie it to the impact. And, it may even help them find collaborators, based on where stuff is getting downloaded. So it's very important for the um, impact piece.
Great. We had a question in the chat, so I'll just read it and you can let me know who would like to respond. Recently, the NIH data management plan changed. Are institutions requesting any overlay details with the changes that occurred? Thank you, Stephen, for that question. Shvak?
So I see both of the formats being used because the old format is still approved to be, for acceptance. So both the formats are being used. Not sure what you mean by overlay. I just see people using like one format or the other format. So it's like, I hope that answers the question. Like both are okay.
Did you want to add a little more, Stephen, real quick?
I guess for context, I in my role often try to receive a copy of the data management plan to glean information about the plans for that data for the researchers' perspective. What's repository they're going to use? What are some data qualities? What regulatory agreements we need to follow? And the distilling it down to sort of the yes or no that kind of happened in this remodeled version isn't been my favorite. And so we've been discussing like having a whole separate like data questionnaire that you also need to give me as well as like whatever the grants data management plan. And then we can give really, really strong feedback and advice as far as what next steps could be for that from an analysis or storage perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I do see that what you're saying is like much more detail was there in the previous format, and that can help understand what they're doing as part of the life cycle. So, um, yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense to ask those additional details, especially for a project that you can see maybe is generating large amounts of data and it seems to be more complex and it's really not clear from the to those yes or no. Like, for example, if someone says that the GDS policy applies, like that would trigger for me, I need more details. What exactly are you using? Which control data set? What's going on? Where are you storing? Because all those additional things, the affirmations from the various teams are needed. And yeah, I mean, the good thing is that you are engaged and you are asking the additional questions to help you help them. So I think that's all good, like as a workflow that works for you and your institution.
Thank you.
I think we'll take one more question from the chat before we move on to our questions. But from Cody, it says NSF seems to require compliance with NIST SP 800-171 Rev 3 now. How are institutions approaching that from both the data and infrastructure perspective?
But that's for the controlled unclassified information only, right? I mean, that's not for every NSF project. So for those projects that include the CUI, so depending upon where your institution is, does it provide an enclave for handling CUI? Then that team has all those additional documentation that probably needs to be provided in support of meeting those compliance requirements for you being able to generate or receive that classification of data.
There's also in the most recent FAR talk about CUI will not be default for grants and will have to be specifically called out by the granting agency, which is a change right now.
Andrew?
Yeah, we're also getting I don't want to say conflicting information from our InfoSec team, but we're also hearing that, well, it might not be required, but we still want to aim towards 800-171 NCMMC certification. I keep sticking to the same idea that I'm hearing from a lot of other institutions, which is very few of us are in a place to be able to do that with the resources we have currently on-prem. And cloud secure enclaves continue to appear to be the only way we can do it in the short term, unless you have if you're at an institution that already has that strict separation of your research from your academic side, it can work. But when I talked to, say, our networking team, and I said, they want us to protect the network in this way. They laughed at me and said, that's never happening with the way that we're like, we would have to do an entirely new building and we'd have to harden it. It would be a whole to do. So I think for any of those more secure approaches, it's not just the data itself. It's your interconnectivity, it's your physical access controls. There's a whole lot more to it than just how you handle the data. And my pitch up the chain for our leadership has been, it's going to have to be part and parcel of a larger project to be able to do that if we ever want to do it on-prem. Otherwise, in the short term, it's got to be a cloud first, secure enclave, and you've got to bring the funding for that. Somebody's going to have to set that up and be the throat to choke because it's not going to be me, and I don't want it to be anyone at the university.
Did you have anything to add, Joel?
I was just going to say, Andrew
Oh.
really hit it on there.
Okay.
Funding when it comes to cloud enclaves. They're not cheap.
Great. Okay. On to our next panel question. How can CI facilitators support researchers with identification of research data management support? What has worked well for you? And I'll start with Bianca and then Liz.
Yeah, so again, I'll come at this from what we're seeing in the library. So our role is really to try to lower the activation energy for folks and make it easy to have good practices and guide researchers through that life cycle. So I know that we're often associated with metadata and preservation and kind of the curation of data, but we also do things on the planning and design end. So research data management consultations. We have one-on-one consultations. We have office hours where people can just drop in for that. Data management plans, things like the open science framework that we support through our institution. And then as far as data collection and analysis is something that we can also assist with. So we have a research informatics specialist that can help with kind of that workflow and informatics consulting. We also offer a lot of workshops, carpentries workshops for the faculty can send students to so that they don't have to teach some of those skills that really support good research data management practices. Um, in programming languages like Python or R, also Git and Shell, Bash. And then we also help with that, publication and sharing. So we give guidance on repositories, DOI minting, and then we have our own institutional repository that folks can use in addition to OSF. And then again, really that preservation and impact, right? So we have things like the Share OK institutional repository, but we also offer a lot of guidance on those research impact metrics. And then again, if it's beyond us or something that we can't do, just knowing where to point people to go, right? So if it's Oscar for high performance computing or tape storage, we also have the Data Institute for Societal Change that can help with things like seed funding and grant proposal support. And so we really just make sure that we're aware of what the resources are and where to direct people.
Thank you. Liz?
So I come from the opposite side of a researcher, and I just found the best way for me to learn and implement and share how to use this data is to follow like what people have done in the past. So NCAR has a big set of online tutorials, and they use Read the Docs for their tutorials. They use Open Data Warehouse and all the cloud computing on AWS for high performance computing. And so basically, I was able to kind of stand up tutorials either through the AWS workshops that they have so that folks can spin up a high performance computer and run air quality models and then save the data to an S3 bucket. Learning that workflow and teaching that workflow, I think, is really important. And then we use Dataverse for the metadata and documentation. But these tools like are free, and they can tell you how many people are reading your tutorials, how many people are using them, and you can basically, with a pretty low budget, offer some pretty amazing resources for people. So I would encourage folks to look for those tools.
Great. Thank you. Any additional comments? All right. So, what are the best techniques for helping researchers learn effective approaches to research data management? I'll start with Andrew.
Trial by fire, throw them into the. Oh, that is, though, I think for a lot of research groups, that is the experience the researchers have, is they join a group, maybe the PI says, yeah, we've got a shared folder somewhere, go read through it. It might be organized, it probably isn't. If there is a senior grad student, like, that senior member that knows everything, you can go bug them, but a lot of new members might be hesitant to ask. So it comes back to documentation and making sure that you have all of your user-facing documentation lined up in a consistent way. One of the things that I've found going through with this new project that I'm working on, because it marries some compliance things into the process, we've uncovered quite a few places at our university where the administrative office assumes that some Word doc they have stashed somewhere in SharePoint is front of mind for everyone who comes to them. And they don't realize that they've put it into the right place institutionally. That's what everyone said. Use SharePoint, put it there. It's not discoverable. They're not going out of their way to make sure if people are reading it. And it creates this huge gap between why did I get this email from export control? Why are they asking me these questions? I've had some faculty feel persecuted by this, like they're picking on me, and I have to keep reminding them, no, they just want to do their job and go home. They're checking a box, and I need you to help them check that box so that we can all move on. Um, I think there's a misunderstanding sometimes from our faculty about why we ask them to do things a certain way. And if you don't put the time in up front to explain that and make it like, we're not doing this to stop you from doing things. We're actually doing this to help you do things so you and your grad students don't, you probably won't go to jail, but at least cause the university a data breach could cost the university money, it costs reputation, um, even inadvertent mistakes. If we don't take the time to educate them, I think one of the I know faculty love to say it's an undue burden. I've looked into that, what that means legally, and it's true. It's a real thing in workplace environments. You can't place undue burdens and undue expectations on people. One of the pillars that helps to make that go away, that mitigation, is education. If you're providing the education and the proper documentation on how to do it, the whole claim of an undue burden starts to just vanish.
Thank you, Andrew. Would anybody like to contribute?
I can just add that as far as helping them find the resources, because as part of, so one thing is that make it easy for them to find everything in one place. A lot of times things are scattered in different websites because, again, coming back to this type of support, sometimes part of the support is in the library, sometimes it's with the HPC center, sometimes it's with the research office, sometimes it's with the IT. Like the burden of finding all this information is sometimes not helpful. So one of the things that we have done is have everything that's provided by anyone in one, basically website where they can go and search for what is it, what does it do, who is supporting it, who they can contact, and what are the learning resources associated with each one of those. The second thing is, like Bianca already mentioned before, is training sessions. In collaboration with the library, we offer data management training sessions throughout the year that are very well attended. So that goes to show that people are eager and willing to learn, and the interest is there, and it's very helpful for them to learn about what is available, how they can improve their data management plans. The third thing is um, I don't know if other universities have done this, but in collaboration with the proposal development team, there is a web course that we have in the university that goes over basically it's grant writing fundamentals, and the data management plan is covered as part of that. And it might not go into too much details because attention span and like 1 million things that come up. But usually, the at the new faculty orientation, for example, that web course is shared with them, and it's very helpful for the new faculty, especially if this is kind of their first role. But it's also shared with others that want to kind of refresh, and they kind of use that as well. So that was something that we did a couple of years ago, and we still see people enrolling and self-paced learning basically.
Okay, thank you. Okay, in the spirit of helping our audience learn from our mistakes so that they can make exciting new mistakes instead of the same old mistakes, what's one of the mistakes you learned from in helping a researcher with their research data management? Nobody makes a mistake.
I can go first. So I think I already mentioned, but the data classification, I find that for some reason, it is so hard for people to classify their data. Like they just get stuck on that one piece. Like who is even responsible for classifying my data? Like, uh, the data depends on the classification depends on the ownership, right? If the owner is your funder, then they will provide you with the data classification. If they forget to do that, you just have to ask them. But if you are generating the data, you are the best person to classify. But that does mean you need to know as a researcher, what are the data classifications available? What is that definition for your university? But usually it would be something that's open, something that's restricted, and something that's like highly restricted or controlled, right? Those are the major buckets. The reason that's important is if you don't classify it right, then your data management plan is really not maybe accurate, and it's not helpful, especially if you're working with any of the control data sets. Another mistake I see is the assumptions that someone might have for a particular service that might not be true. And I think that means, so for example, I see a lot of people saying that they are planning to store their data on OneDrive provided by the institution, and that's automatically backed up and all of that, right? And so you're immediately like, nothing is backed up automatically, especially the cloud storage services. They have SLAs for availability, but the backup is still on you. They may provide versioning. Versioning is not the same thing as backups. That's like if you delete something or you edit something or change something, you can go back to a previous version. You may delete a version and there's a recycle bin, but that's still not backups. None of these things are backups, but this thing I find over and over again, it's like interesting, right? That people that are closer to the services think that these things are obvious, but they are really not. Who is telling these people uh, these details? And it's our responsibility, and we need to do a better job at, you can store it here, and by the way, this thing provides X, Y, and Z, but not, one, two, and three. And so more, there has to be a little bit more effort on our side to educate, like make that information readily and easily available and bring it up when you see those types of assumptions being made. I think a third uh, kind of mistake or challenge is knowing the limitations of each of the resources, right? So if something is available, like OSF was mentioned before, but you have to know that for an open project or a free project, up to 50 gig or something is their limit. You have to know those limits, because when you are guiding the researchers, you have to guide them appropriately, right? So therefore comes back to knowing those questions about how much data do you have, what is the growth, and whether this is even suitable or not for that purpose. Or in some cases, for those archival systems, you have to know, what is there a maximum number of files that I can upload? Maybe there's a file limit in addition to a single file size limit, right? So these things are, and those things also change because these providers might be external providers. So you have to, as the facilitator, you have to keep abreast of these limits for these systems, and so that you are able to again help and guide them and not point them to one place and then later on point them to other, and then they kind of lose their trust in you that you don't know what you're talking about, right? And you're wasting their time and all of that. So just a couple of
Thank you.
things from
Okay, Joel, share your mistakes.
All right, well, I'll share one of them. We don't have nearly enough time to go through all of them, quite frankly, Becky. So the one I'll call out here is way back in the day, 2012, U54, for those who are familiar with those types of grants, a large-scale sequencing genomic grant. And these were the early days of data management, as well as consortia working at that point. To give you an idea, we have no data management plan was absolutely acceptable as a data management plan. So, and this was by all the funding agencies and everything. So it was pretty much we were doing things as we went on it. It was really an important project for me, and I learned some really critical lessons from it that I think can be abstracted fairly well to general cases. Uh, First of all, I have down here in my notes tens of petabyte scale, completely different from the problems you face with hundreds of terabytes. Orders of magnitude makes things interesting. You're going to find that your techniques that you've used in the past aren't going to work. So you're going to have to be very creative, think quickly, and don't be afraid to try new things. That's what we're all here for. Another lesson that I learned. Have your subject matter expert create all your data information, and then have a non-subject matter expert review it. Because as someone said very, very rightly beforehand, this is your onboarding document. Bianca, I believe it was you. If you don't do this right, you're in trouble. And we ran into that as well. Funding, I could keep harping on that all day. Don't be afraid to ask for all sorts of things. If you don't, you're never going to get anything. Another point that I think is important, subsuming your own expertise. I don't care if you're the newest facilitator, the oldest hand running a research computing center, you're there for a reason. Make sure that your voice is heard and don't be afraid to speak up when you need to. Okay. Another point that I learn every single day here, leverage your library. Please talk to them. They're wonderful partners and they're fun people as well. If I had done that back in 2012, I would never run into the problems with metadata and scale that I did. Okay. And that's just the reality of it because they're experts there. We're not. Talk to them. And then finally, a bigger one, assuming that others care, because you're going to find a lot of people don't. Okay. This is the lifeblood of what we do, data, care. And one thing I'm really excited about is hearing from all the participants there that, yeah, as a rule, we do care. So that's kind of neat. Thanks, Becky.
Thank you. Andrew.
I could share. I think the mistake that I would go back in time and have me not do is one that just popped into my inbox right now. I just got a request from our buying group saying, "Hey, do you know anything about this Synology and the 420 terabyte drives somebody's trying to buy with it? Stop letting groups set up their own storage. It won't be audited. It won't be backed up. Don't rely on what groups tell you they need. Our job is to listen to what they need and figure out how to accomplish that within the bounds and guidelines of the university. It is never as simple or as cheap as a researcher wants it to be. Our job is not to make it that cheap, although we can. And I think one of the other lessons that I learned early on was I came up through material science, then within our College of Engineering, and now I sit in a central role. There were problems that we couldn't solve at the departmental level because the scale just wasn't there. There are problems we can't, even with college resources, we just couldn't solve. Like backups at scale, the backup tail doesn't get cheap until you scale it up, especially if you're rolling something like tape. Obviously, if it's all cloud, you're a very linear cost model. Um, but something like tape only makes sense to do in a central, broad way if you want to see that payoff. If you're standing up 6 tape libraries on campus, you're throwing all the money away. Like big initiatives need to be central and don't and I was always hesitant when I would get a price tag on a quote that was like had 7 figures and I'm like, nobody's going to want to see this. And then you bring it to the folks who do see those figures on a regular basis and they don't bat an eye. So don't be afraid if you think the number looks big. Sometimes it has to look big because it's a very real liability for the institution.
Okay, thank you. And now that you've confessed a mistake you've learned from, what's one of the smartest things you did when you were helping a researcher with their research data management? We had all these mistakes. We know we have smart things we've done. Yes, go ahead. I'll start with Christopher and then I'll go to you, Joel.
Oh, no, actually, something Andrew said just reminded me of one of the, I think one of the most critical things when you're talking about infrastructure is people. A lot of times people worry about hardware this, hardware that, or software this, software that, but you have to make sure you hire and keep hired good people that know what they're doing, because you can, whatever hardware you have is not going to take care of itself.
Now, do you want to talk about one of the smartest things you've done, Christopher?
Oh, I think teaching, I think um, there's just so many things to do and we can't do it all. And I think just trying to teach and create resources that you can like if you do a workshop, record it and make it available so people can review it, or I made a cheat sheet that grew into a 24-page pages of commands and so forth, but just make resources and help people learn and just um, just always be teaching and because that's we yeah there's too much to too much to do for one or two people, so teach.
Okay, thank you, Joel.
I think the first one that I've had that was a bit of a revelation was to me is that the funding agency is a great group to work with. Uh, Look, the cognizant program officer is the one who's going to be responsible for everything in the end of it. If you have questions about what you're doing or what's going on, talk to them about it. Our industry is becoming commoditized, it's becoming commercialized. Compliance is no exception to that. Everybody's working off of checklists, templates these days. These are all positive things, but it makes the edge cases more challenging, quite frankly. When you run into those, do this sparingly, but don't be afraid to approach the program officer. They often have really great advice to give you, and at times will actually work with you to determine if carve-outs need to be made. And then the other thing that I've learned over the years somewhat painfully, but I'd encourage everyone to do is don't be afraid of policy, change it. If something doesn't make sense, if it is conflicting with whatever you're doing, find the people who are responsible for the policy and talk to them. We're all agents of change, or we wouldn't be here. So don't be afraid to go out and make some effective changes.
Good advice. Shafak.
Um, so I think one of the challenges that we had was how do we help researchers know about what is available and what all of the support is available? So, because usually they would come to you if they know about you. They won't come to you if they don't even know you exist. But even then, if they know that you exist, they don't know that you can help them with this. That you can help them navigate all of the, support for the different pieces of the data lifecycle management. So, as part of all of this, one of the things that we implemented is we defined a set of questions during the proposal submission process in our research administration system itself. We added those questions, and those are related to, some of them are related to the data management. Some of them are related to compute and stuff. But those questions then in that system trigger reviews for my team, and that helps us review those things at the proposal stage itself. Uh, and we can provide feedback that they sometimes incorporate that they didn't know. It's very specific. Hey, you're trying to do X, Y, and Z. This is what's available. Here's the additional write-up if you want to include it in your resources. Sometimes it's like asking those additional questions, but trying to really catch it at the proposal. And then we do the same thing at the award stage. So we are not caught off guard because sometimes they might not answer those questions, at that time. And then just having these things is not enough because triggering those ancillary reviews is a job of the proposal administrators. So we went through a whole thing with going to all the meetings and all the different groups that help their respective colleges for submission of the proposals to help make them understand what are we doing? Why are we doing this? Why does it help the researcher for this proposal, making it stronger? Who are we? Because proposal administrators, they're the first point of contact for most of these researchers. And having that partnership with the proposal administrator is also very important. So them recognizing that and then them accommodating us in their business process and then using the system to help then have all of these things tracked. It has been um, quite a bit of a process to put in place, but now we are at a stage when everything is in place and things come to us and we're able to help the researchers because we can, of course, can get a lot of work. Sometimes the deadline, like when the Genesis mission deadline was there, it was like 40 proposals per day. What's going on? It was crazy. So sometimes it can get crazy, but what we realize is even if you inform someone about a new resource that they were not aware of, like for the long-term archival, maybe there's a system and institutional repository available from the library and they haven't included that. Doesn't matter even if they didn't include it for this proposal, because you inform them of it. That means it would be a recurring aspect of their future data management plans, and they can include it in the future data management plan. So it's all good. We see it as a learning, very research specific, project specific, at the right time. We would love it to be earlier, much earlier, that people somehow think of us at the right time and all of those things. But if we get embedded in the proposal submission and the award receive process, that's kind of what we have done. And I think that has been uh, a move that has helped us to connect with the researchers and provide them with what they need.
Andrew?
So, the thing I've had success with, and that I don't know if it's the smartest thing I've done, but it's definitely worked for me, is none of our folks live in a bubble. They all see the news reports every day of this breach, 4 million email addresses and credentials leaked. This breach, 21 million. Your social security is out there. So when we talk information security to them, what they've traditionally heard is, you don't trust me. And I think the message that I've really been more successful at pushing it to is, it's not you we don't trust. We're here to help you. We don't trust the folks outside trying to get in and pretend to be you and your students and do things on your behalf and leak data. We're not trying to stop you. We're trying to stop people pretending to be you. And that is a far more effective, it brings them along on the journey. As you're under my umbrella, we're all trying to stay protected together, and not, sorry, we're the compliance people and you're outside of the. So bring them into your bubble and pitch it as, we're all on the inside trying to keep the outside out.
That's a really good point.
Thanks.
Okay. To researchers, what is the one thing we could solve for you that is a large pain point or friction point? Liz, I was going to say, Liz, this is your area.
So my most terrifying email is, you've exceeded your quota on this disk and all the jobs will stop running unless storage is freed up. And usually it's a shared disk. And I don't know how to resolve that, but that is a big pain point for researchers, I believe. And so more archive, more ability to archive data, get data off of where the work is occurring. Um, and yeah, I would I really enjoyed going to AWS in the cloud, because as a researcher, I can see what those volumes cost, or I can see every cost that I'm incurring, whether it's virtual machines, high performance computers, networking. So that feel for how expensive is this job that I'm going to be doing, you don't really get that from a university set of resources. You do get a better feel from it for the cloud. And yeah, I don't know how that solves the disk problem, the storage problem, but that's my biggest pain point.
Great. Would anyone like to answer on behalf of researchers what they think their pain points are? Okay, I'm going to go to our last question and then we'll come back to the chat for questions that are there. But how are you funding data management? Big sales? No, just kidding. Joel.
The hybrid model, I don't think we're too uncommon when it comes to that. Obviously, we're leaning on the grants themselves for a large portion of it, but let's not rule out the roles of, especially my role, the VPRI. We receive a lot of funding through that stack for it, for everything from hardware to people. So, other than that, a lot of good wishes and hopes.
Andrew, do you want to add anything to this?
I think we're in the process of making the pitch right now to pick up some significant tape hardware to do these things centrally, and the argument that I keep coming back to lean on is the cost of not doing it. Sometimes you have to point out the cost of no action is still action in a lot of ways, and you sometimes have to really attach a price tag to not buying something, not doing something differently. People move when it costs them too much to stay. So that's the part that and again, sometimes when you do things centrally, the price tag looks bigger than you might be used to seeing or comfortable having conversations about. Um, Unfortunately, like for stuff like data protection, it costs what it costs, and there aren't a whole lot of ways around it. So when faculty say, I don't have the money in my grant to protect the data the way that you're telling me now that I need to, that's not a signal to say, well, then let me figure out how we can cover it up or how we can like make it. No, that goes up the chain. Like that needs to be felt higher. The aggregate effect of all of that makes the argument for doing it centrally, I think.
Good point. Okay, does anybody want to add anything to that? So those were the last of our panel questions, but we're happy to open them up to our audience here. So I see one in the chat. And the question from Joe is, are researchers catching up to all of this, or are the bulk of them still surprised? What should institutions do to close this gap? Christopher?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, like we occasionally we have like 5 different programs, and we'll go visit each program, and we'll say, we're just to teach them, here are the good, here are good practices, and just do it, just reach out and reach out to different departments and tell them that you want to help people maintain the data and preserve it and so forth, and just you just go and teach.
Right. I know it's frustrating with how many departments there are, but in our case, I don't know what everyone else's custodian of record is for research data. At Drexel, it is the department head. There's a lot of them. It's frustrating to have to go talk to each one individually, but you really you have to make friends of your lowest level administrators. Department heads are typically faculty as well, or program managers, whatever your school or university calls them. They feel the pain of the researchers because they are typically, a lot of ours are still doing research, but they also have to wear their administrator hat, and they know the other side of it. So they're your best allies in getting these things out to faculty because they can hear it from the administrator side and help you translate it into the words that their faculty will understand.
Joel.
I think researchers are now really getting onto it these days. This isn't the days where they're going in blind. We had to deal with that in the past. But most researchers are fairly data savvy right now, and they're really looking to us for answers, I find, for the most part. To bridge the gap, everyone said get out there and talk, but we hold seminars as well. We invite in guests to speak about important things with data management from funding agencies, just any way we can get our word out there.
Okay.
I just want to say thanks for the answers to my questions. I've been working with researchers since 2009, and I have noticed them catching up. But oftentimes I often feel left to my own devices by the institution. And I guess what I want to see if anybody else's institutions. You mentioned Joel, you mentioned a lot about the commoditization of the craft that we practiced, and that's interesting to me because I feel like there's a way to package this as an institution that makes it even more apparent that these are, quote, the hoops. We don't want to call them those, but these are the hoops that researchers need to do or follow to get to the end state that they're looking for. That's not really a question. It's more like a comment meant to drive discussion, but that's just how I. Thank you.
Joe, it's great points, by the way. And yeah, it just is what it is, unfortunately. And the industry, our industry is changing as time goes by. And I think it will continue into the future. I don't think it's going away, but it's going to be different.
Also, as we see more and more faculty comfortable asking LLMs things, giving them sort of your institutional policies in friendly, I mean, I've started converting ours into Markdown and making them available, but putting them into LLM friendly formats that they could drop it into a RAG and say, "Hey, ask your compliance bot 3000." Um, it, it sounds like everybody's chasing that LLM to answer all of your questions for you kind of idea, but there's some validity there. If you give them the raw documents, a lot of them can figure this stuff out on their own. They just need to know what that predictable rule set is first.
Great. Are there any other questions from the audience? From V2, how do you show the return on investment from the position for RDM?
So I would like to say that that's kind of it's the same as you do with any other position. We don't have any specific position for just research data management and support. Everyone is a CI facilitator that has to wear multiple hats, and maybe some are more experts on some services and some on others, but everyone knows how to get the right people in the room because that's the most important thing. But as far as showing the return on investment, usually for like facilitation roles, because I would consider this as a facilitation role, it boils down to how did you accelerate the research, right? Because that's what your main role is. So if you want to count how many, like, if you want to do the tracking of interactions that you had, or consulting that you had, or training sessions that you had, and because that's really what you can show, right? Especially because most of this is happening at the proposal level, and then after something is awarded, then your team can get engaged in supporting the specifics of that particular awards data management plan, and then you have actual impact that you can show because now you have the sponsored research projects that you can link to all the effort and the time that you're spending. But prior to that, I think if you want to count numbers from your end, it would be like those engagements and the sessions and things like that. But additionally, it would be great if you can start collecting feedback, right? The qualitative feedback, right? If some people got really helped and felt really helped by talking to you and the support you provided, a lot of times people are, open about that, and researchers can sometimes you can ask that if you thought something went especially well, and you were like, hey, would you mind giving me some feedback? And all of those things are going to directly show uh, the impact of the work that you're doing and the support that you're providing.
Thank you. Okay. I believe we may be at the end of our session. I want to thank all the panelists for their excellent responses and answers, and also to our audience for the great questions that they provided. And I'll turn it back over, I think, to Henry.
Could I just have one more comment? I just want to emphasize that there's certain just data assets. Just make sure yeah, you yeah. Anyway, make sure researchers realize that their data, yeah, that they have data. I like the term data asset. I like it because it's like, it helps them realize that this is valuable. And so anyway, I like that term. So that's all.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, panel. And let's give our panel a round of virtual applause. That's kind of groovy. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.